a 6 hour long YouTube video is a bit much, so I didn't want to like make the video that big. Um, for anyone who doesn't know who I am, thank you for joining me tonight. My name's Phil Gallagher. I run Thraben University, and I am a huge Death and Taxes fan. Tonight we're having some fun. We're casting Direfleet Daredevil. It's a really neat card. So far, it's done things like in my previous round, bolting my opponent for lethal. That was pretty neat. Although doing something as simple as just like brainstorming or pondering when you're not supposed to be doing that because you're not in blue, giving your deck a little extra consistency, that can probably be good enough. All right, so someone says, Phil, how would you feel if you got paired versus elves that had Dread of Night in their sideboard? I don't think I can say my true feelings on stream. I don't think that's allowed. So we're just going to go ahead and run back the Direfleet Daredevil list again. We're going to try to do some sweet things. I'm not sure exactly what Twitch's agreements say you can and can't do, but I think talking about my feelings about Dread of Night in an Elves deck would probably breach some amount of the things I'm not supposed to do. Alright, well, this hand has no lands, so I'll mulligan that one while I see if I have any data on my opponent, who is Testacular. Oh no. Oh no, they were last seen on Elves, guys. I'll keep this one. I'll keep that land. That'll let me cast my Swords to Plowshares. I'm gonna get Elves. We dead. As long as my shirt stays on, I'll be okay sharing my thoughts. Twitch is not a fan of boobs, huh? That's fair. I know this isn't the best swords target, but in case my opponent has Gaia's Cradle, I just literally want to remove the first elf that hits play. Just think of the value. I get to cast Glimpse of Nature. Yeah, I guess. So now I have to think about whether or not I want to get rid of the Dryad Arbor, which is guaranteed mana, or whether I want to get rid of the Nettle Sentinel, which can be a potential combo card a little bit down the line. I think I want to, like, guaranteed deny mana and hit this Dryad Arbor, and then try to hit the Nettle Sentinel mid-combat with Thalia. You're not thinking far enough. You can cast Green Sun Zenith for X equals 0. Hadn't considered that line. Come on, attack. Attack. Attack into my Thalia. Give me hope. No. Alright, fine. I'll take the Vial up. I hope someone out there likes Pox as much as I like D&T. Maybe. Maybe that's possible. All right, we are just casting this as a 2-1 with first strike. I want everyone to understand that. We're not going to try to hold out for value. It looks like we might get this game won, and I hope I'm not speaking too soon, but if I'm going to win a match, it needs to start off like this. They're not playing Collected Company. That would be absurd. I would get a good laugh out of that, Jeff. I would not even be mad about how dead I was to a Collected Company if it happened. Alright, here we go. Trying to aggro out elves before I just get natural ordered. And I think, not gonna... What am I even bluffing if I hold it up? I guess I'm bluffing a Crusader. Yeah, I'll hold this land back. Think about the value after you cast the Collected Company with Daredevil. Don't kill me. Don't kill me, please. I have so much to live for. There's a Wirewood symbiote to start grinding me to death with Elvish Visionary. 5 mana, that's a lot of mana. It's a natural order. Probably dead. Haven't done math yet, but that's a lot of bodies. Is that 6 bodies? Yeah, that's dead. It's very dead. Chad, I spoke too soon. That was hubris. I started to think I might have a chance. I didn't have a chance. There was no chances there. All right. So sideboarding. Orzhov Pontiff. Great. Sanctum Prelate. Great. Recruiter to get. Orzhov Pontiff. Great. Crusader. Bros. Canoness and Containment Priest. Also bros. Alright. What's bad? Thalia seems bad. Our good friend Direfleet Daredevil seems weak here. But there might be other worse cards, actually. Like, Thalia's really bad. P&K is way too slow for this matchup. Palace Jailer is not going to be reliable removal. My opponent is going to go wider than me. Flicker Wisp isn't particularly good. Magus of the Moon can, like, randomly sometimes hose them and take them off a Gaia's Cradle. So, like, it might just be Direfleet, but, like, it being a 2-1 first strike is not irrelevant here. And my opponent might have things like Abrupt Decay post-sideboard that I actually might want to hit or, like, discard. Like, this seems weaker than everything else. But, like, I'd be cutting 6 first strike creatures from my deck if I do this, which is a lot. And, like, then their plan of just, like, aggro me out might be more realistic if I cut this many dudes. Someone says take out 1 Magus. I guess you're taking out 1 Magus. Like, I kind of want to have one to shut off Cradle. But, like, maybe that's too ambitious. Like, I've had some games where I've locked out Elves players with Magus. I can maybe even, like, take out both Magus and just keep these as guys to hold the ground. And, that's tricky. Like, the Magus is fine. Like, the Magus can keep my opponent from casting Abrupt Decay. It can potentially keep them from getting green to cast Nissa. Like, seeing as this matchup is terrible anyway, and I'm probably going to lose anyway, even with the Pontiff, I kind of want to keep the Direfleet Daredevils in to see if they'll do anything in the matchup. Nah, Path isn't great. Like, on all of their mana dorks, you actually don't want to path them. This hand... Alright, so let me record that. So Direfleet Daredevil versus Elves. I think I was on the play, and I lost. I lost to Testacular. Game 1, natural order. So, sorry, just finishing that thought. I'm going to keep this hand because it lets me Orzhov Pontiff. And I think any hand that lets me potentially Orzhov Pontiff is worth keeping. Like, 100% worth keeping. Like, that is a way to win this matchup. I will have to draw one land in order to do it on turn 3, but I think in 2 draws that's reasonable to expect. Sorry, I got distracted again. Like, Path to Exile is not good on their mana dorks, which is the majority of their deck. Like, the only card I actually want to hit with Path to Exile is Wirewood Symbiote. Like, the rest of the cards in their deck I actually don't want to Path to Exile. Oh man, we're doing it. We're doing it. You get to throw this Jitte on board, scare him a little bit. Sort of unfortunate that Deathrite Shaman is a 1/2, but I think everyone and their mother has expressed that claim before, especially Goblins players. Poor Goblin Lackey doesn't get to get through Deathrite Shaman. Feels bad. Crop rotation. I get to crop rotate for a Cradle. That's solid. Heritage Druid. Scary. There's a lot going on. Can you just, like, dump your handful of X1s? That's what's happening. So, opponent's just going off here. Are we, like, is our, like, turn 4 Pontiff just going to be too slow on the play? That's super disappointing if that's the case. Maybe we can just, like, naturally draw the Pontiff here and mise my opponent even more. So, I can Recruiter of the Guard, get Containment Priest, and if I get Containment Priest, then Natural Order isn't an out for my opponent. They would have to, like, actually have the Crater Hoof in hand in order to, like, just kill me on the spot. And I can just hold up the Containment Priest, not Violet in unless I have to, and then on my following turn, Flickers the Recruiter, nuke their board at that point. That might be my best line here. Like, so if I just Flicker Wisp for Revoker and they have a Natural Order or a Green Sun Zenith, I'll just die. Yeah, so the symbiote is sweet. The fact that they have 2 of them is really annoying too, because, like, even if I Pontiff, like, I just get the 2 symbiotes off the board. Yeah, so for, like, the immediate turn, I'm going to worry about not losing by getting Containment Priest. And in the turns that follow, I'll worry about winning. Yeah, so for those of you not like overly familiar with Legacy Elves, it is a combo deck that has a very realistic draw engine slash beatdown plan built in. Rex Sage Blow Up Jitte, that's annoying, but fine. If they... Alright, 6 mana, basically a billion mana. Am I going to see like a Nissa here? So losing this vial is pretty devastating. No, they usually don't run Shaman of the Pack. The primary win condition is Crater Hoof Behemoth, which they can Green Sun for, Hard Cast, or Natural Order for. So this is super unfortunate. I now can't Flicker with my Recruiter of the Guard to go and get the Orzhov Pontiff. Which probably means I'm just like stone cold dead. I kind of have to hope that this Containment Priest does way more work than I want, like than I can possibly hope it does. So now I'll Flicker Wisp. I'll cut them down to one Wirewood activation a turn. Yeah, so like at this point, I am just hoping that my opponent's hand is full of cards that they can't cast due to Containment Priest and not Abrupt Decay. Unfortunately, like this Batterskull can't actually stabilize the board because of the Reclamation Sage. This might be the Abrupt Decay for the Containment Priest. It worries me that they're tapping like that. That just means that they probably just have a Natural Order and I'm dead. No. How am I not dead? Oh, come on, kill me. Kill me. Just let me concede. 10. Alright. What are we doing? Oh, we now have to like Green Sun for X equals 8. Okay, sure. Alright. We tried. We tried. Our turn 4 Pontiff wasn't going to be fast enough. Oh no, we were stone cold dead there. Let's not kid ourselves. We don't expect to win the ones against elves. Like both times our openers were relatively ideal, and both times they weren't good enough. So game 2 we lost to Natural Order after Decay for our Priest, and Pontiff wasn't fast enough off recruiter. All right, let's get back in there. Let's try again. We got paired against elves first time around. Not that big of a deal. It happens. We shake those off. That's why we have the exclamation mark elves command. It works, like so. So thank you for all of you who joined in tonight to watch me stream with some Direfleet Daredevil. I'm hoping he gets to do some more sweet things like he did earlier. My name's Phil Gallagher. I run Thraben University, and if you're enjoying my content, feel free to follow my stream. I'm trying to grow it and make the content even better. I've got some people working on some content for me to make your lives a little bit more enjoyable as you watch me stream. I can't give you an exact date for when all that stuff's going to be done, but it is in production, and I have a few guest articles in the queue as well. While we're waiting here, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer those. None of it is mono black content. Almost all of it is based around like death and taxes exclusively, and so it's always going to be a white base. You know, as black as we're getting tonight is like one Orzhov Pontiff. You know, there's one black symbol in the 75. That's as deep as we're going. Let me see if I still have that screenshot up from earlier, because the screenshot is sweet. So for anyone who just joined in, this was a game earlier today where my opponent was at 1. We recruited for Direfleet Daredevil and then bolted their face to kill them in the face of a Jace that was bouncing a Snapcaster Mage for value. So that was neat. My opponent was pretty impressed. We're hoping to make more moments like that to, you know, see if Direfleet Daredevil is worth it or whether it's, you know, too awkward of a card. It's got a really high ceiling for power level, but the floor of it being just a hard-to-cast 2-1 with First Strike might be too much. My Kingdom for a Legacy match. Here's a deck list for anyone who's curious. It's very similar to what I'd been playing with the red-white taxes before, although the Direfleet Daredevils have replaced Vryn Wingmare. And I made a couple of changes in the sideboard that went along with the rest of the changes in the main. I added a 3rd Cavern of Souls over the 4th Rishadan Port to make this little buddy a little easier to cast. Once I added the 3rd Cavern of Souls, it made sense to throw a Pontiff in the sideboard. And because I went and took away the Vryn Wingmares, making my combo matchup a little bit worse, I added 2 Sanctum Prelates in the sideboard to compensate for that. So against decks like Show and Tell, I can just kind of throw that on 3, and that'll be a game-winning play most of the time. Oh, we are playing against a Space Goblin. This hand looks great. See if I have any data on them. My opponent has played a lot of different decks. Most recently Grixis Delver, but it was about a year ago, so data is unreliable. So I will just keep a relatively good hand in the dark against them. I'm going to go ahead and just fetch basic planes here. I have a Cavern of Souls for red if I need it. My educator's voice and patience are real assets. Yeah, so, like, I learned a lot of things from my education in classics, which, for anyone who doesn't know, is like Greek and Latin and mythology and whatnot. But, like, one of the best life skills I ever picked up was, like, just learning how to talk to people, you know, learning how to explain things, learning how to be patient and, like, work through people as they're learning stuff. That's something that's really had long-term dividends for me. Like, there are a lot of really wonderful and smart Magic players that when you go and talk to them, you don't get the best results in having a conversation with them, even though they're wonderful players, just because they're not used to like explaining to people who don't know as much about the game as they do, or they can't necessarily explain, why this line is better than that line. And I like to think I'm pretty good at that sort of thing. I'm glad that you've been enjoying the stream. If you haven't already, feel free to follow. I intend on having a lot of content coming in the coming weeks, and hopefully more than that. This stream I intend on being a long-term project. I expect this mom to just eat a lightning bolt. Wish granted. Oh man, that is a great draw. That is a really great draw. My opponent is probably on strictly blue-red Delver rather than Grixis Delver at this point. So I think I just want to pressure their mana right now while I have a decent tempo advantage. So I'm just going to get Thalia. Many MTG players seem to have an EQ issue. What do you mean by EQ? Earthquake? That's what EQ means to me. I always tutor Wisp. Yeah, Wisp is a great card. Like I can get Wisp, and if something goes wrong, all right, I take it back. They're Grixis Delver. Oh no, did I just like F6 through their turn and not play my Stoneforge? Or no, I Recruiter for Thalia put that in. All right, never mind. Everything's okay. So how do I want to play out this turn? I can Wasteland them off black so that they can't drain. But that adds a couple more lands to the graveyard. But lands in the graveyard is probably happening no matter what. I can just port them, get Stoneforge, get Batterskull. Every line that I do this turn starts with an attack from Thalia. So I'm just going to do that first. Well, I think. I think I want to not wasteland them, but I think I want to port them. That way on my following turn, I can Sword of Fire and Ice equip, or Jitte equip, with Karakas backup still, holding the Thalia up. Don't get Batterskull, get SoFi. I think I agree with that. So, Atai, I don't know if you saw my post on the source, but I'm actually streaming with the Direfleet Daredevil list right now. I think it's only a card or two off from what you posted before. I think the main decks are identical or like very, very close. And I think I'm playing a couple of prelates in the sideboard where you have, I think, a Cunning Spark Mage and something else. All right. My opponent plays True Name. That makes it real stupid easy which piece of equipment I'm gonna get. Second death ride. Hey, big fan. Glad to have you. I hope I will get to do some cool Direfleet Daredevil things and make it worth your time being here. So my opponent will just chump block with the Deathrite Shaman here. Sorry, I lied. I didn't take into consideration that my opponent might just be bad. So my opponent gives us an extra card and like takes 4 more damage than they need to by letting that happen. Ooh, and a Flicker Wisp. Not gonna do anything with that Flicker Wisp yet. I'm just gonna pass the turn with that up. And if nothing else, I will just Flicker Wisp my Recruiter on their second main phase. So I'll set a stop on my opponent's second main phase now. Ayate's not a mob. Scrub. Let's make him a mod. Invalid username. Oh, it is 3 E's. I-T-E-E / mod I-T-E-E. There. Can I be a mod? I don't know, Nick. You might abuse your power. I've seen you in power before. Alright, so playing against Grixis Delver here. We won game 1. So game 1, SoFi beats True Name. Alright, let's see if we can make up for those losses from earlier against Grixis Delver. We lost both of our matchups earlier against Grixis Delver, which, while it's a harder matchup with this, like with a red build than with a mono white build, it's still not that bad of a matchup. So again, I tend to board out my Revokers. I board out my 4-drops here, and I board out my Recruiters because they're a little bit slow. Oh, EQ as in like the opposite of IQ. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about now. I've done studies about that. Why did we need to time out that user for 600 seconds? No, I don't like Prelate in this matchup. I don't think Prelate is good in this matchup. Like, a lot of times, like, you have 7 1-drop removal spells that are in your deck, and you're worried about stabilizing the board. Like, if I have Prelate in my main deck, I actually board Prelate out in this matchup. A Latin teacher would play D&T. Yup. Alright. My opponent has mulliganed. I will keep this hand. Like, it has a piece of removal for their first creature. It has 2 relevant creatures. And it has something that can sweep off a True Name in the late game if I get a Vial or a Cavern. Phil, true story. I'm also a Phil, and a classics major, and a former educator, and a D&T enthusiast, and I love Propertius. You love Propertius, you say? I don't know that I'd go so far as to say I love Propertius, but like he definitely has his moments. If we ever meet at a GP or something, the universe could explode. Yeah. If you ever bump into me at a GP, like, please let me know, and we'll have a beer and talk about D&T and classics and have a great time. Hi, my name is Phil, but I do not enjoy D&T. Well, I guess not all of the Phils can enjoy D&T. Based on the Phils that are here, you know, it seems like 2/3 of the Phils enjoy D&T. It's me from the future. Maybe. Like, but is it me from a future where I played Direfleet Daredevil, or me from a future where I didn't play Direfleet Daredevil? Asking the real questions here. Yeah, sure, but aren't you usually behind against Delver? Like, isn't that the whole, like, deck? Like, that's their whole strategy, is, like, you're supposed to get ahead as Delver, and then you win? Like, I think I would much rather have, like, all of the cards in my deck over Prelate. Like, I keep testing Prelate in this matchup, and, like, time and time again, I come to the conclusion that I don't like it. Like, in the Game 1 matchups, I really like it, because, like, you still have the recruiters in the deck. But once you pull the recruiters from the deck, and you're not in the position where, like, you can just find it when you want it, I don't think it's that good. Ah, Iati. I have won approximately 1 billion D matches with Delver on Prelate, and this is a rough estimate, of course. Yeah, like, I'm not gonna say that, like, the card is, like, unplayable or anything like that, but I really don't think it's where I want to be in the way that I am playing this matchup. Do we just Magus of the Moon here? My opponent is thinking about something, and I'm not sure what they're thinking about. Like, I can just Magus, I can play a Stoneforge Mystic, and then I can Wasteland them. It's somewhat likely that my opponent is going to have something like um, a Lightning Bolt to deal with my Thalia or whatever creature I play. So I sort of want to wait like one turn to play the Magus. So I think I'll Stoneforge. No, I think I'm making them, like, right now, they can have Daze, Force, Bolt, Forked Bolt, or even something weird like Dismember. All right, Stifle the trigger. All right, you get to Cabal Therapy. You don't know my hand. You're very unlikely to hit either one of these cards. Like, I'd name Swords to Plowshares if I were my opponent. All right, they name Magus of the Moon. Sure. Phil, who's your first love? Ovid, Catullus? Yeah, Ovid's great. Like, as far as Latin stuff goes, Ovid is towards the very top of my list. My opponent says, "Lol, I just traded your list." Someone says spooky. Like, if they're really afraid of just, like, absolutely losing to Magus of the Moon, it's not unreasonable for them to name it, but, like, I don't think that's the best name that they can get there. And we're porting off black to avoid something like a Gurmag Angler or a Deathrite Shaman. Although my opponent's turn is likely, like, sacrifice an elemental to flashback this Cabal Therapy and get rid of the Orzhov Pontiff before I draw a Cavern. Yeah. This is kind of one of the reasons why I'm not, like, overly thrilled with playing Pontiff with, like, the mana base that I have it in. It's... You get to cast it off of just Cavern and Vial, which is fine, but, like, for example, let's say they didn't take it here and I had a Scrubland in my deck, then I would be able to go and cast the Pontiff this turn. But I don't know that I'm willing to, like, make the mana even worse by throwing a Scrubland in there. Iety is a foul and disgusting human being and should never be allowed to touch a vial. I don't think that's true. A bit of a troll, sure. But he knows his way around an ether vial. No, it's true, Phil. Alright, fine. Is that a Joe Lossett fan saying that? We have a stream rivalry going on? I will 100% accept this trade, sir. I'm not sure why you're making this trade. But I'm in. You have, like, a Diabolic Edict or something like that? Or do you just want to, like, start pressing damage? I don't know what's going on. But I accept. Alright. That's super punishing. But it's fine. Like, we're still going to get to resolve that card. Alright. My opponent can have mana for one turn. You get one turn to, like, Fatal Push this Thalia or equivalent. He knew you were gonna draw that Sword of Fire and Ice. He just knew. That's fine. Yeah, I'm still streaming. This is my second stream of the evening. We're working with Direfleet Daredevil to see how that goes. How is the Delver Pirate? It's done a couple of interesting things. Whether or not it's doing good things, Hard to say. Oh, Ancient Grudge on the sword. Opponent just wrecking me here. One time I witnessed Ayati write a D&T primer for his local shop's Facebook page, and after increasing interest in the deck, he drove to the shop and literally burned every copy of Basic Plains in the land box. We're gonna hit him with the mid-combat tap their wasteland, see if they want to like actually waste me off one of these ports or off my plateau. I don't really care either way. Yeah, sure. I never know whether or not I'm supposed to believe all the stories about you I hear. I tend on not believing them. And I think my opponent knows about this land already, so I'll just play it out. He burned all the plateaus. That sounds like burning too much money. That's taking too much value off the table. I only burned some of them. Just have to send the message. I understand. I understand. Plateau is the only viable dual land. Probably, but like, is Scrubland even a little bit viable? Do we want to make casting the Pontiff better? Maybe. It's a little sketch. Alright, my opponent is attacking with one of these, meaning they're probably at the point where they're ready to start jump blocking. Wasteland is a sweet draw. Pontiff is probably bad. Probably. I wanted to try it since I put the third cavern in the deck. Like, every time I put Pontiff in my deck, like, I play it for a league or two, and then I take it out because it's just, like, frickin' impossible to cast. Yeah, sad opponent with no land. That is indeed the situation that we're in. Backup Thalia, just in case. And it's very possible that like this one will get bolted or something in response to me porting them. But like that's their turn if that happens because they don't have another land. This is the slow death. I love this. I'm not gonna exile the token. I wanna save this for a real spell if my opponent ever gets to cast one of those again. Alright, my opponent just conceded to me tapping some mana. My opponent doesn't play real spells, he's a Delver deck. Got him. Alright, so we're on the draw for that one, and we win. So game 2, win with mana denial. So somebody was asking about Direfleet Daredevil and whether or not it was good. Got 2 screenshots now. Here's one of it holding 2 pieces of equipment and taking down some Gurmag anglers. And then here was the fun one from before, where we lightning bolted our opponent for lethal damage when they had like a Jace in play. So those are the neat things that I've done with it so far. More generally, the list looks like this. I have 2 Direfleet Daredevils in here over the Bryn Wingmares that I was playing before. I added a couple of Sanctum Prelates to the sideboard to compensate for the combo matchup getting a little bit worse. Alright, playing against Cyrus. Alright, so opponent last seen on Ad Nauseam. That is Ant. We're going to mulligan this one because it has no lands. Not a good hand against Ant. Like, this card is dead. This card fetches Salio, but is too slow. Like, do I keep this one because it has lands and the potential of a combo piece? Because, like, I can beat some Goblin tokens with a Batter Skull. Questionable. It's not where I want to be in this matchup. Like, since my opponent mulligan, maybe that's good enough to keep this. I'm going to keep this one rather than mulling too aggressively since my opponent also mulliganed as well. That can go to the bottom. Alright, opponent confirmed on Ant. Alright, so Cyrus CG. Just want to update that before I forget. Alright. Land. Pass. It's actually kind of good for us that our opponent had a Duress, because that means that's one card that doesn't actually help them combo off. So, like, it's possible that our Recruiter will be fast enough. Or they might just, like, combo off and get me right now. Who knows? Alright, Infernal Tutor for another Dark Ritual. Sure. So opponent has 4 cards. I think I'll port them this turn, then Recruiter for Thalia, slam Thalia, and see if that works. We'll see if my opponent gets to, like, just Dark Rit, Ad Naus, or something silly like that. Alright. Alright, opponent. Show me a Cabal Therapy, or kill me. I like my opponent casting cantrips instead of cards that start killing me, so there's a chance. Alright, looking dead. We'll see. Not guaranteed dead if this is just Ad Nauseam. Lots of mana. Alright, so it's Ad Naus. So we're not guaranteed dead, but it's bad shape. This is probably just enough to kill me, right? So Stormcloud's 5, Rit, 6, 7, 8, Cabal, Rit, 9, Tendrils, dead. Yeah, I am 100% dead here. I don't know why my opponent is still flipping. Hey, Brainstorm Show fan, welcome. We're getting Ad Nauseam right now, and I'm actually just getting ready to concede because my opponent's going to go Dark Rit, Cabal Rit, and then kill me. Alright, so we're on the draw, and we lost. So game 1, both mulliganed. I lose to Adnaz before Thalia comes in. And that's fine. I usually lose game 1 of this matchup and then get games 2 and 3. That's how this one tends to go. All right. So I'll board in Canonists. They're amazing. Rest in Peace is great against the graveyard portion of this deck. Relic Warder can stop a Dread of Night, or it can stop like a random piece of artifact mana that they play out. Preliates are great. Recruiter's great. Pontiff can stop Goblin tokens. I might board that in. So I'll board out the Stone Forges. I'll definitely board out Jitte. I'll board out my 4-drops. And then I have more cards than normal to board in for this matchup. I can maybe not board in the Pontiff, but like it is an out to what they have going on. Drop a land. I don't know that I want to drop a land in my like 3-color deck if I'm bringing in Pontiff. Like I'm fine with drawing all of my lands. Like all I need to do is like draw a copy of the right card plus lands, and that tends to win this matchup. So like I guess I could drop a Stoneforge and a Flicker Wisp. How has Dire been? Direfleet Daredevil's been pretty good. We're still sort of early on in testing. So like I can't say with 100% certainty that it is good enough, but it seems like it has the right power level for Legacy. All right, this is fine. Like this has a bunch of disruptive cards. The turn 2 disruption is a little bit softer than I would like, but like a Revoker is a fine piece of early disruption. Yeah, it's super interesting. So for anyone who doesn't know Direfleet Daredevil, it's kind of like a reverse Snapcaster Mage, where you get to cast something out of your opponent's graveyard instead. What matchups does Palace Jailer excel in? It's really good in a lot of game 1 scenarios against like the sort of fair mid-rangey decks and control decks. Like when you're playing against something like Delver or Infect or oh no, am I just getting turn 1? Or no, my opponent's just playing it out before Thalia. That's good. I'm happy about that. Ah, there's a Direfleet Daredevil that I'm probably going to cast. So blind, I tend to put Revoker on Lion's Eye Diamond in this matchup since it's a much more powerful card than Lotus Petal. But since my opponent has a Lotus Petal on board, I'm going to name it. Alright guys, on the list of weird things that I've never done before, let's ponder. Do you think it might have any effects on red-blue decks in Modern? Like, to tell you the absolute truth, I don't play enough Modern to coach anyone about Modern at all. this has a side effect of like getting one card out of my opponent's graveyard that might potentially keep them off of threshold. And my wasteland taps for blue. Like, I can cast this mom this turn, but I, like... This might be fine. Like, I can get mom in play this turn. I can rest in peace the following turn and set a Sanctum Prelate on 4. And then I have this Relic Warder to do things. Like, I kind of just want another land. But, like, this is probably enough hate to win me the matchup. So I'll put the Relic Warder on bottom, then the Mother, or then that, and then I'll draw the Mom. No, I won't shuffle. I'll cast the Mom. So, like, I wouldn't blame someone for shuffling there. But, like, I get to protect this Revoker and play a Rest in Peace, and then have a couple of sweet 3-drops to get in as well. Digging a grave in my backyard, I've seen everything. Darn D&T kids with their mono white decks casting their ponders and splashing red and black cards. Yeah, opponent panicked. I agree, thinking it was going to be a Thalia. It was not a Thalia. All right, the opponent just scooped it up there. They know about the prelate. They know they're pretty stone cold to that. I'll be on the draw for the next one. So game 2, we really win with Revoker and Rest in Peace. Although the Direfleet Daredevil, like, was not bad there. It's sort of awkward that we had the interaction of like, hey, I have Direfleet Daredevil, but I also have Rest in Peace there. Wait, Viled in Daredevil and cast a sorcery on their turn? I don't think I can do that. Like, I would need to reread the card, but I don't think I can actually cast a sorcery on their turn. This is an Ether Vial hand, but doesn't have any sort of actual hate bear unless my opponent makes goblins. So I'm gonna ship this and like try to find something better. This is a little weak still, but it has a Vial and a Recruiter. So like on turn 3, assuming I hit a land, I can Recruiter for Thalia. I will keep that. I'm gonna put Prelate on bottom. Like, I know it's a really good card in this matchup, but I would much rather draw a land or a 2-drop. Yeah. So this now sets me up to have turn 3 Recruiter into Thalia and put Thalia in. Like, that still might be too slow, but I have a lot of good draws. Like, Port is an awesome draw. Thalia is a great draw. Rest in Peace is awesome. Canonist, Revoker. Like, lots and lots of relevant live draws for this turn. Are we dead? Looks like we're dead. Why is there a long pause after casting 2 Dark Rituals? Like, so sometimes the Ant matchups are like really one-sided like this, where like one person just wins by a landslide. But the Ant matches that like have a lot of back and forth are super interesting. Like when you get into the games where it's like the Ant player has to like chain of vapor a bunch of things and like kind of go off in stages. Those games can be interesting. All right, so my opponent has 6 mana. They can get past in flames. Go. Oh no, that was a Cabal Therapy, not a Cabal Ritual. Never mind. So that's still enough. That's exactly enough. Yeah, so that's you know, Storm count for Tendrils, not a single mana left over there. That's unfortunate. All right, so yeah. So if I had one more turn, the Rest in Peace would have prevented them from going off. Oh well, so be it. Like that's what happens when my opponent goes off on like turn 2 on the play before I get to play any 2-drop that matters. Like I accept that fate. Goes off on turn 2 on the play. Really a lot had to go right for me to lose there since my opponent took a mulligan to 6. And that's why Force of Will is good. Yeah. I guess theoretically I can Force of Will now, right? You know, if I have 5 mana, I can just tap my Vial, put in Direfleet Daredevil, and get him. I had the opportunity to cast a Daze earlier before I started streaming when I was just kind of messing around in the tournament practice room. Alright, I won the roll. Playing against Caithness. No results for this player. I'm on the play. I'll keep a hand that has 2 Wastelands and a Thalia. I'm game for that. On the play versus Caithness. Just gonna lead on Windswept Heath and pass, represent myself as potentially a different deck for a turn. Oh, right. Tap 6 for Force of Will with Thalia. How could I forget? How could I forget about my lovely Lady Thalia? Kind of want to see if my opponent will stifle me. You want to stifle me? Because then I'll Wasteland you back. So while I'm waiting for my opponent to give me priority, I have to think about whether or not I want to Wasteland or whether or not I want a Thalia. And the Mom made that really easy. That makes me want to just like play Mom and Wasteland them. So I'll cast my Mom. And I'm going to go to their turn and then Wasteland them. This plays around Stifle to the greatest ability that I can. Or I can just throw it at it right now because they tapped mana. And now I have a follow-up Wasteland and a follow-up Thalia. Life's looking grand. Why would you allow them to bolt, Mom? Because I want the Thalia to stick around. Like, Direfleet Daredevil is a solid draw. So what my opponent do with a Ponder? I shuffled? Oh man, we just take my opponent off all mana? That's great. Does my opponent have a force for this? If not, that's super bad. Alright, force pitching Brainstorm. Why that art on your Thalia? Oh god, I hate this Thalia art so much. I think it's awful. When I bought my deck, I bought it as like a bulk purchase from whatchamacallit, from like Card Hoarder. So I just got the cheapest copies of everything when I did my cart optimization, and that happened. Like, I would never play this Thalia art in real life. And I'm going to wait one turn to play my Direfleet Daredevil so I can get some value off of it. I'm not in any hurry. My opponent has literal no lands. I love it when my planes tap for blue. Is that good? Is that okay, chat? I think that's fine. I think Stoneforge is good when my opponent can't do anything. Hey, I'd love to be a mod, by the way. I don't know, I already have one guy named Ayati as a mod. Like, that's probably enough Ayatis. We're gonna correct the artworks in the future. Maybe. Like, I don't know that I care about it enough to do it. No, you need to dig to your second Daredevil. That's a good point. I didn't consider that. That's probably a misplay. Like, second Daredevil and just bolt their face really sends a message. Yeah, you can force that one. That's fine. Man, Darfleet seems sweet. I pre-ordered pretty cheap for the small chance that it was a sideboard option. Like, it's probably good enough to see main deck play, like, realistically. Like, even here, just, like, pondering would have been fine. Or, like, assuming my opponent had literally anything, like, lightning bolting their creature would have been good. Oh, it's only $1.60 to upgrade art? Yeah, okay, I'll do that. That's fine. Alright, opponent gives up. Alright. So I think it's pretty safe to assume that we are playing against Grixis Delver rather than Blue-Red Delver because we saw the Wastelands. Alright, so game one, double waste win. Let's go to the sideboard. Like, Darfleet Daredevil is probably even better in Vintage, where, like, you can go and get, like, Time Walks and Ancestrals and things of that nature. Like, I haven't played it in that format, but conceptually seems sweet. Alright, so again, done this Song and Dance a whole bunch. Revoker's out. Jailer and P and K out. And then what did I do after that? The recruiter is out. Yeah, I don't know if this Pontiff should be in the deck. Like, I talked about this a bit earlier, but, like, I thought it would be fine because we went up one Cavern of Souls, but it's been a little clunky and hard to cast. Too slow against elves to matter, which was super sad. Look, man, Daredevil is a bit of a Nanbo with Thalia. It's a bit of a Nanbo with Rest in Peace. But sometimes you do silly things. I'll be keeping this hand. It's a little bit awkward. I'm going to want to fetch a Plateau for these 2 red cards in my hand, but I want to fetch a Plains to not just get, like, super blown out by Wasteland. So we'll see what happens here. Like, D&T is full of, like, Nambos if we think about it, right? Like, I have Containment Priest in my Ether Vial deck. That is what we call totes awkward, as the children would say. Like, I have cards like Swords to Plowshares that are non-creature spells in a deck with Thalia in it. Like, there are all sorts of small Nanbos. Drawing Wasteland's actually pretty nice. I'm gonna just lead on my Vial, because, like, curving out, like, Mom into Daredevil into Moonman off of Vial sounds sweet. If it gets Dazed or Forced, like, whatever. It's annoying, but it's not the end of the world. How do you say totes awkward in Latin? That's, it's not a question that's come up before. I'll have to think about that. So, one of the things that's kind of interesting at Latin is that even if you're really, really good at it, speaking it can be really, really difficult, because the way most people learn Latin is they learn it for reading, meaning you're really good at recognizing words and, like, figuring out meanings of words in context. But when you have to recall a word that you've only seen once in the entirety of the time that you've worked with a language and try to use it in casual conversation, it can be really, really tricky. Totus awkwardus. Close enough to convey the point, Red Twister. I agree. My opponent is thinking deeply, contemplating their life choices, considering why they're not playing Direfleet Daredevil in their 75. I think that's what's going on. Or they might be considering whether or not they want to fetch again and expose both of their lands to potential double Wasteland. Wasteland you once. Didn't get stifled. I'm going to want to fetch a Plains at some point, but I think I'm just going to play the Wasteland here, and see if my opponent does anything with their mana at my end step, and if they do, I'll waste them. This kind of might effectively deny them a mana. My opponent also knows about my mom, so they're going to have to hold up a mana to deal with that. Otherwise, it just does fun things with this game. To the whole stream in Latin. It'll be fun. Playing the Wasteland is worse. So I only have two lands here, and on my next turn I want to Direfleet Daredevil, Ponder, and Fetch, and then on the following turn I want to Fetch again for another basic plane, so, like, I don't think playing the Wasteland is worse. They might Wasteland the Wasteland. Isn't them Wastelanding the Wasteland just, like, fine for me, though? Like, I have this Vial that is a concern for them. Alright, seems like my opponent is going to Gurmag Angler me. Can turn off this stop on my opponent's second main phase. I don't need that anymore. Oh man, my opponent even left me the Ponder for my Direfleet Daredevil. They're so considerate. Well, do I just double Wasteland here? Double Wasteland into Moon Man is kind of sweet. Like the only way this ends up being bad is if my opponent has like land lightning bolt. Cries for Moon Man echo throughout the room. We have invoked Keanu Reeves in the chat. All right, what does chat say? Double trouble, double wasteland them. The full mooning. Mom can block for days. Get him. I might wait a turn to Direfleet Daredevil and like ponder and then play Moon Man on the following turn. I kind of want some value off of this Daredevil. GG opponents. What is that? Illuminati symbol plus a raccoon? So I kind of want a Direfleet Daredevil, ponder, and fetch a plains, and then Moon Man on the following turn. Because then I can have like 2 white mana. Oh, Illuminati killed the Trash Panda, I see. Don't know how I didn't consider that before, given everything that was going on previously, you know, with like Keanu Reeves and Latin ridiculous phrases. Should have been clear. Yeah, like Stoneforge into Magus is reasonable as well. Oh, that's pretty nutty. I will take all of that gladly. I'm going to put the sword as the 3rd card down, but I want the rest. I'll put the Stoneforge on top of the deck to protect it. Yeah, so this way gives me a little bit better value off of my Vial. It'll give them 1 more turn of colored mana. That's okay. They're pretty mana starved right now. And if they just have something like Young Pyromancer or Grim Lavamancer, as we see here, they could cast through the Blood Moon anyway. In the face of Grim Lavamancer, I still think I'm going to tick up and moon him. I get my 2nd white source here. And I'll go ahead and moon now, because it'll let me play a Stoneforge around a daze. And my opponent just concedes to the Magus of the Moon, even though like they have an active Grim Lavamancer, so with like one lightning bolt they can get it off the table. My opponent has just had enough of shenanigans. Why do you want sword when you already have Jitte in hand? So I wasn't actually going to draw the sword unless like I changed my potential lines, but like I'm definitely fine seeing the sword, and I'm definitely fine with like Stoneforge and land as things draw as well. All right, so we're on the draw there, and we win. So game 2, again, it was really mana denial that did it. And our good friend Direfleet Daredevil gave us a little bit of value, although we didn't necessarily need him that game. Alright, so let's see if we can get this last one, and then end up 6-4 with this deck list for the day. I'd be pretty happy with 60% for the evening with a new deck list that's still a little bit awkward. If I were to do another stream with this, I'd probably pull the Pontiff out of the sideboard for something else. Oh man, I am all about Sword of War and Peace. I love, love, love Sword of War and Peace. One of my favorite Magic cards. It is a card that really breaks the mirror wide open while also being really, really good elsewhere. So against a control deck like Miracles or Check Pile, like if you just start crashing in with that sword, the damage racks up really quickly. Or against a deck like Sneak and Show, for example, it can make your Stoneforge Mystics live instead of dead cards. So when you go and do something like play and equip Sword of War and Peace against a deck like Sneak and Show, if they have 7 cards in hand, then that's 7 damage from the sword's trigger, in addition to at least 3 other damage from the rest of the card. So a lot of time, like a Sword of War and Peace, no matter what creature you're on, can be a 2-turn clock against a lot of combo decks, which is really neat. Burn hates you super hard with it. Yeah, so like in the Burn matchup, a lot of times you end up like boarding out Sword of Fire and Ice, and so all 3 pieces of your equipment that you have in the deck afterwards are pieces of equipment that gain you life. And that's a little edge that matters. Thank you all for joining me tonight. In case you don't know me, my name is Phil Gallagher. I run Thraben University, and I love me some Death and Taxes. If you've been enjoying my content, feel free to follow me. I intend on streaming quite a bit. I'm looking to make Monday and Wednesday nights at about 7 Eastern my regular streaming times, although I'm going to do a handful of other assorted streams here and there. Looking to grow this stream a lot and increase the quality of the content. I've got a few things in the work that I'm waiting on other people, but let's just jump into this match. Alright, versus Lone Star 16. I know that I've played against this player recently. Alright. Oh man, my opponent was on some sort of weird Nick Fit deck. That's right. I'm on the draw. If my opponent is on a Deathrite Shaman or Veteran Explorer hand, then this hand is pretty nutty. Like, I have a Revoker for Deed, I have Swords for their first 2 idiots, and I have a Stoneforge to like get a Batterskull so I can actually realistically close out the game. So I'll keep this. Oh, neat, I was on the play. Even better. Vile, go, go, go. I gave you a follow. Ah! Well, folks, my opponent has pitched Omniscience to Force of Will. So I'm not sure what that means. I don't know if that means that they're on a completely different deck, or if they're Nick Fit that happens to have Omniscience in it too. But it looks like my opponent has switched to Sneak and Show. Snap keep, followed by concede. Yeah, we're probably dead, but we'll find out. So we're playing against Sneak and Show. We're on the play against Lone Star 16. All right. We're dead this game. We might not be dead, but we're probably dead. All right. You say show and tell. I say Phyrexian Revoker. What do you say? You say Omniscience. All right. Your toy is a little bit better. We'll name Grizzlebrand. What do you got for us, opponent? Oh, you have an Emrakul. The thing you watch a show and tell is better. I'm gonna Swords my Revoker in response to that. And then I'm gonna concede. We did. Yep. Alright. So game 1. Loss. So turn 2, show and tell, Omni, Emrakul. So pretty much no matter how good my hand was, I was not going to beat that hand. Like, we don't beat hands as D&T that have show and tell, Omniscience, and Emrakul. Like, that just does not happen. That is so incredibly difficult to beat. Alright, so for this matchup, I board out Swords to Plowshares. Like, swordsing a Grizzlebrand is overly ambitious and probably does nothing most of the time. I'll definitely board out Jitte, and I'll probably trim the Stoneforge package more generally. I'm trying to beat the unfair side of this deck. It doesn't really matter how I kill my opponent, so long as I kill them. So I'm looking to set a Sanctum Prelate on 3 in this matchup, or get this Leonin Relic Warder to hit an Omniscience off a show and tell. Alternatively, I can like Palace Jailer and get a guy out of there. But these are sort of the things that I'm looking for. I remember when no one played Omniscience in this matchup, and it was a bye, and I had like a 75% win percentage against show and tell. I remember. Yeah, but now that like they have 3 Omnis in the main, it is rough. This matchup has gone full circle to being like absolutely, without question, a bad matchup. Yeah, I'll do it. So this has Mom into Thalia with Revoker as well. And we'll hope that does enough. This isn't an optimal hand, but like, this does things. We'll keep this. Really need to draw another land. If I have to play this Cavern of Souls... Oh, good, I don't. Caracas is nice. Although if I just play the Caracas, they might be less inclined to just, like, go for some random show and tell that will just dump in a creature. Nick, tell me more about that later if you know more. I don't want to talk about that on stream, but thank you for telling me. I like to sandbag Caracas for as long as I reasonably can in this matchup, but if I have to like name something with Cavern here, that's kind of bad. So since my opponent is going to be a turn or 2 off from casting show and tell anyway, I'm just going to like run a Thalia out there. And I don't think my opponent is likely to play something like a Lightning Bolt to get the Thalia off the table, so I'm just going to like get in there with Mom for a point of damage. Yeah, so really glad I didn't play out the Cavern now, because now I'll put it on Artificer so that I can cast P and K if I need to. Now that I'm going to have 2 creatures on board, I will hold back Mom. And my opponent is also more likely to be able to cast something like a Pyroclasm. So I could just name Grizzlebrand, but I should probably just, like, name Sneak Attack, actually. Like, if my opponent has a Grizzlebrand, I just bounce it. If my opponent has a Sneak Attack, the Caracas stops that in the short term, but not in the long term. Alright, so my opponent's at 13. If I just play out this Direfleet Daredevil and don't get any value out of it, then my opponent is on a 2-turn clock if they fetch. So while that's a little bit sad, I'm going to go ahead and do it. You think this isn't a good pirate matchup, but they have cantrips. Cantrips! That's good enough. Like, it's not the best pirate matchup or anything, but, like, it's good enough. Yeah, this is the non-bow pirate Thalia combo. But we might want to hold up this Caracas anyway, so. D&T is the real pirate stompy deck. Oh, man. Oh, man. I might need to label my deck as pirate stompy. Blood Moon, you say? Alright. That stops Caracas. But it won't stop me from casting this P&K. I'm liking my chances here. So I have Lethal on board, and if my opponent show and tells, I get to Flicker Wisp whatever they show and tell in. That seems solid. What do we do with all these mountains? Win anyway, is the answer. Alright, so we're on the play there, and we win. I assume that it was Thalia that won us that game. So game 2, win with Thalia, and maybe Caracas. Unsure how important that Caracas was. Yeah, so, like, if you say this isn't the best pirate matchup, like, what would you want instead? Would you feel better about one more Stoneforge? Would you want a Crusader over the pirate? Like, I don't think just, like, a random thing that casts us a Ponder is necessarily bad. Like, pondering and, like, getting closer to something like a Prelate or a Flicker Wisp or a Leonin Reliquary that can, like, win us the game, that is not irrelevant. And I think that's going to be better than this. And, like, I don't want to bring in Path for Grizzlebrand. I think that's, like, overly ambitious and, like, probably not going to work most of the time. I think. Not 100% sure, but I think. Oh, yeah, as far as exciting goes, yeah, it doesn't have a lot of exciting uses in this matchup. Alright, I'll keep this. It has a Vial, it has a Thalia, it has a Flicker Wisp, and it has a potential Ponder. strike that. Potential brainstorm. Yeah, like this hand isn't going to get locked out by a blood moon either. Oh, that was a nice draw. So now our good friend Thalia is uncounterable. Yeah, when the Vile curve is just beautiful. The Vile curve's just right. My opponent playing a little bit scared of Wasteland by getting both a basic island and a basic mountain. Alright. What do you got going on? Show and tell. I'm going to bring Flicker Wisp to class. Alright, I get to flicker your Omniscience. Alright. So if my opponent has an Emrakul, I'm super dead. If my opponent has a Grizzlebrand, I don't really care about that much. This is probably one of those situations where I don't know exactly what I'm hoping to draw. I'm gonna Direfleet, Daredevil, and Pond and Brainstorm. I guess a Leonin Relic Order is not the worst. Okay. We have toys. Trying to decide whether or not I want to sneak the point of damage in with a Mom here. So I have 5, 6... So I can hit for 6 this turn, putting my opponent to 13, and then I can hit 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Attacking with the Mom is unlikely to change the clock, so I won't do so. Yeah, so like the only card I'm worried about my opponent having is Emrakul. Like Grizzlebrand is not scary. Well, he's scary in that he draws 7 cards, but like the only card I care about is named Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn. Ooh, man. There's hope. Alright, they topped one of those cards. Alright, they topped a Ponder. So note that my opponent is dead if they do not find Emrakul. I do have 7 power on board. Yeah, don't let Phil get paired against elves is a stream rule. Alright, my opponent is still digging. In case anyone isn't aware of this interaction, Omniscience lets them cast the spell for free, but the Thalia attacks sort of happens after they cast the spell for free. It's an oversimplification, but that's basically how it works. So Omniscience lets you ignore sort of the initial cost of the card, but not the total cost, including things like Trinisphere and Thalia attacks. All right, my opponent shuffled with their ponder. They're casting another ponder, still digging. Anytime you rejoin the chat, you get the chat rule again. Or I think like every hour, if you haven't said something, you might get the chat rule again. All right, they didn't shuffle. Did they find the Emrakul, or do they get one more cantrip to find it? You've gotten up to storm count of 5. Oh man, Pyroclasm. Do I keep the Thalia, or do I keep the Flicker Wisp? I think it's the Thalia. Like, I can keep the Thalia, bounce the Grizzlebrand, vial in Relic Warder to get rid of Omniscience, and then set a Prelate on 3, and like that should be that. Tendrils! Bye, Grizzlebrand. Oh man, my opponent now has to discard, like, infinite cards. Why not bounce my Thalia and protect something else? Because I want to bounce the Grizzlebrand. Like, this game is effectively over. Like, I guess that's something I could have done, but, like, I know what I'm doing with my mana this turn already. Like, with 100% certainty. So, like, the line I took of, like, just letting one more thing die and not bouncing the Thalia lets me leave Caracas up this turn. I've locked out Show and Tell as a win condition. This means that my opponent can't, like, reasonably do... Yeah, see, like... It has to be, like, another... Alright, a Braid on the Leonin Relic Warder. Alright, that is annoying. Alright. Sure, my opponent gets to replay the Grizzlebrand. That doesn't do anything. I bounce the Grizzlebrand. And I have 4 power in play, so my opponent is dead. I'll take up. It lets me flicker out Omni if I draw Flicker Wisp. Alright, my opponent threw the breaches. I will bounce your Grizzlebrand. Alright, so our opponent just made us do the obvious there, and I respect them for doing that. So game 3, we had multiple 8 bears. Okay, so for tonight's 2 leagues, that was 2 3-2 finishes with the Direfleet Daredevil. The card is definitely worth testing. I will probably continue to test it a little bit more. Whether or not it is consistent, it's a little hard to say. Whether or not the sort of dyssynergy with Rest in Peace is worth it, that's tricky as well. It may come to pass that, like, because I'm running Direfleet Daredevil, I might not want to run Rest in Peace, and I'll attack some of the matchups like Check Pile in a slightly different way rather than with cards like Rest in Peace. And I might try, like, going to some surgical extractions in the sideboard of my red-white deck, or something like that, so it doesn't like mess with Direfleet Daredevil so much. But I have a feeling that Rest in Peace is just so good against such a huge chunk of the format that like that awkwardness is okay. Like even if I have a Rest in Peace, like in the matchups where like I've stuck a Rest in Peace, this just being a 2/1 with first strike might just be good enough. He was trying to hope MTGO would screw me. Hey, it's happened before. Like, you know, you misclick and all of a sudden your opponent gains 7 more life, and like that is absolutely devastating. So what should I get rid of? What should I put in over this Pontiff? Like, I'm not convinced that this Pontiff is good enough. Or like it's really awkward on the mana. Should I go back to having a Cataclysm in the deck? I had 2 previously. Like, that would be a reasonable card to put back in. I don't necessarily think I want the Cunning Spark Mage that was in there before. Not a huge fan of that. Do you think Direfleet Daredevil might become something? Like, should I speculate on them? Financially speaking, I would not speculate on a card that is in Standard that probably won't see a ton of Standard play and will only see niche play in Legacy and Vintage. Like I don't think this card is going to become a Snapcaster Mage in terms of value because it's a little bit awkward. Like unless you're taking advantage of the card in some way, like just playing a ton of value oriented cards in your deck, and like this is just one more value oriented card, or unless you can kind of cheat the system with something like Ether Vial. I don't necessarily know that like Direfleet Daredevil is insane. All right, so chat suggestions for sideboard. Get in Cataclysm. That's those are both reasonable cards. I could see playing one of those. A lot of times when I run Cataclysm, I prefer to run 2. Like something about having 2 copies of like a Cataclysm or an Armageddon type effect just feels better to me. So that I can depend on them a little more heavily in the matchups where they matter. Having a Cataclysm or multiple Cataclysms in the deck really helps when you get paired against random stuff like Big Eldrazi, and a Cataclysm can just like absolutely win you those games, and you have time to draw to them. But like, there's a considerable difference between your odds of drawing a card when you have 1 versus 2 of them. And like, I'd kind of want to play 2 Cataclysms if I was doing it, but I don't. I think I only have 1 slot here. So like maybe the 1 Cataclysm is just fine. And I just do that. Spirit of the Labyrinth. That is not an unreasonable suggestion. I'm not a huge I'm not a huge fan of Spirit of the Labyrinth, generally speaking, because it doesn't do well in combat. But like if I'm looking to patch up my combo matchups a little bit after like being worse to them in game 1, like that's reasonable. Fiendslayer Paladin. So Fiendslayer Paladin is something that both Ayati and Bahra include in their red-white lists. But I have just been constantly underwhelmed by that guy. Like, I want to like Fiendslayer Paladin, but, like, I don't think it's fast enough to matter in the burn matchup. Like, if you're casting Recruiter of the Guard for that, is that better than Prelate on 1? I don't know that it is. If you naturally draw it, is it fast enough? Probably, but, like, even then, like, sometimes your opponent just like slams a Sulfuric Vortex and you just cry and it doesn't do anything. So like, do you want to say anything like in favor of Fiendslayer Paladin? All right, it just coincidentally showed up. It's great versus Delver and Pile 2. I found that it's not like game winning against either. Against like a Grixis control deck or a Pile deck, it hangs around and it doesn't necessarily die. But sometimes it just gets brick-walled by stuff that's just sitting on the field. Because, like, unlike Crusader, it doesn't have real protection. It just has, like, pseudo-fake protection. anyone who is unsure about Fiendslayer Paladin, let me just pull that up because it's not a super common legacy card. So it is white, white, 1, first strike, 2/2 lifelink, and it can't be the target of black or red spells your opponent controlled. So, like, it can't be K-commanded, Fatal Push, Lightning Bolt, Fork Bolt. It dodges a lot of removal spells from in the format. But since it doesn't have true protection, like, if your opponent plays a card like a Baleful Strix, like, it can just block that. It doesn't get through. First strike means that it oftentimes takes a couple of bodies to actually trade with it, which is okay. I don't know. I've tried multiple times. Like I've tried this card in the sideboard as a 1-of or a 2-of. I've tried it in the main deck, and a lot of times I find that like I'd play it against a Delver deck and I just get in this awkward staring matchup with a young Pyromancer where they eventually win because they're generating more bodies. Why is Fiendslayer better than Paladin Invec? Fiendslayer Paladin gains you life, whereas Paladin Invec just has protection from red and black. So, like, the cards are different. Paladin Invec is, like, a real pain to kill, but it doesn't really come with any, like, strong upside other than just not dying. Like, Fiendslayer Paladin at least has upside in that it has first strike and lifelink, so, like, how do I say this? Paladin Invec might be borderline unkillable for a deck like Checkbile, whereas Fiendslayer Paladin might be a card that is more generally good. Like, it might be stronger in the spots where it's actually good. Auroch Champion, not bad. Fiendslayer Paladin forever. Night, Ayati. Thanks for joining us. Thoughts on something for Black-Red, namely Surgical or Fairy Reanimator, or Fairy Macabre. That would be a reasonable use of the slot as well. I did trim a Rest in Peace when I went down from 3 Rest in Peace to 2 Rest in Peace because I'm playing Daredevil. So maybe a Surgical Extraction is better in this slot. I'm not actually huge on Fairy. Fairy is something that is good against Black-Red Reanimator specifically, but otherwise is pretty mediocre against a lot of the format. So, like, a Surgical Extraction in the spot where this Cataclysm is could be fine. Not for creatures specifically, but for a lot of spells, Direfleet Daredevil does the same thing that Surgical does. I don't like Fairy either. I've only just seen other players play with it. I've tested it a lot, many different times, and I've just been unhappy with it. Whereas Surgical a lot of times will just win you a game. Like, you know, your opponent starts going off with Ant, and you go and Surgical their Infernal Tutor in response to a Past in Flames, and they just, like, sputter out and die. Or, like, you're playing against lands, and you get to Surgical Extraction their Loams, or, like, one of their combo pieces, and then, like, their life is so hard. Whereas, like, the only time Fairy is good is, like, specifically against Red-Black Reanimator. And then there are a couple other times where you board it in, and you're like, well, maybe I'll get to the right spot where this Fairy will eat a Loam, and they won't have a second Loam, or, like, they'll magically make a mistake with their Punishing Fire and let me get it. I'm going to have to think about this last slot a little bit, but generally speaking, I like what I've got going on with the list. So I'm going to go ahead and call it a night here. Thank you all for joining me for tonight. Again, if you enjoyed this content, please follow me. I'm looking to grow the stream. I'm going to go ahead and dump you in some other stream that is hosting Legacy.